Welcome back, everybody, to the Core 4 Sports Show. On this show, we talk about the four most popular sports, in my opinion: football, basketball, baseball, and hockey. But with football season rearing up to go this week, we're just breaking down everything from a college football and NFL standpoint and getting that out the way. I'm going to talk about the ACC today and then also any NFL news. All right. To jump right into it, who could win the ACC, or who is the favorite? Clemson's the favorite in this conference for sure. I mean, in my opinion, Clemson has kind of turned into one of those window teams. And by that, I mean, they no longer just reload and stack NFL type talent. Because of their unwillingness, or Dabo Swinney's unwillingness, to use the portal and to use NIL to their advantage, they are not getting the highest level of talented players. And what they're having to do is they bring guys in and they're having to develop them, which is fine. It's just, they're not getting the most talented available players out there, so they're taking a little bit longer to develop, and they have to kind of build their team up over a couple years, rather than an Ohio State or Alabama who can use the transfer portal, bring in guys who are ready day one, while the other guy they just brought in takes a year or two, so on and so forth. Or they just bring in a freshman like a Jeremiah Smith or a Ryan Williams or a Trevor Lawrence, who just comes in raring to go. Clemson is not that, I don't think, anymore. Just again, because of their unwillingness to use NIL and to use the transfer portal, they take time to build up. And I think that, and this has to be the year, because they return 80% of their production. That is number one in college football. They have 80% returning production. Three of their top four wide receivers, and then four veterans on the O-line, and they just went and got Tom Allen to be the new defensive coordinator. I mean, if you're Clemson, everything is aligning for you this year to take that next step and go compete to not only win the ACC. They can do that. They can do that any year, basically, in the ACC. They've won 8 out of the past 10, but to not only to win the ACC, not only to just make the playoff, but go compete to win a national championship, which they've been incapable of the past. We're talking now 6-7 years. They've fallen off from one of those top 10 teams every year to they seem to have finished in that 10 to 20 range. And just on paper, they haven't had the talent. But like I said, the guys they have around there now have been there for a while. They have 80% returning production. They have veterans by college football standards in the wide receiver room and the O-line, and then Cade Klubnik, their quarterback, all coming back. So it's like Ohio State last year, Michigan the year before that. This has to be the year where they go and compete to win that national championship. Because after this year, all those guys are going to be gone. They're either going to graduate, they're going to go to the NFL. There's no guarantee you're going to be able to keep Tom Allen there for another year as defensive coordinator. If the defense performs really well, he could end up getting a coaching job at another college. So in my mind, this just has to be the year, because then after this year, again, you're probably back to, now we've got to build back up, and we've got to develop the guys that we have, and that may take anywhere from a year to 2-3 years and so you've got to go do it this year. You've got to just take the ACC by its throat, stomp on everybody else, walk your way into the playoff, and get yourself a home game, a bye, something, and then go on a run and try to win that next national championship. All right, Miami. Miami did a lot of work in the transfer portal. A lot of people think they have fixed a lot of the problems surrounding what was Cam Ward last year. Cam Ward obviously wasn't the problem last year, but the defense and some of the things around him just weren't up to snuff, and it continually cost them throughout last year. The problem is, even if they've strengthened those areas around the quarterback position, Cam Ward isn't coming back. He's not walking through that door. You went out and got Carson Beck. I I just have a hard time believing in Carson Beck right now. He did not have a good year last year at Georgia. Now, to his fairness, wide receivers were awful when it came to just catching balls. If I remember right, when I was looking at it last year, like they may have led college football in drops. It was just ridiculous. Constantly not being able to simply just catch the ball was killing them. And sadly for Carson Beck, there's not a stat where, oh, it's like baseball has the unearned run, like, oh, it's not your fault. Sadly, football doesn't have that stat where it's like, oh, that's a technically there are drops, but they don't get to take it off his. Like in baseball, that unearned run doesn't go towards your ERA. In football, even if it's a drop by the receiver, it still counts as an incompletion for Carson Beck. I I think I would be in favor of creating a way where that's a drop on the wide receiver, and so it actually doesn't go against Carson Beck's completion percentage or doesn't count as an incompletion, and that way his numbers look better because it's not his fault if his receiver can't catch a ball. But with that said, he himself still did not have the greatest year last year at Georgia. And then you had the shoulder injury and the shoulder surgery. It took him forever to get back to throwing. I know Mario Cristobal keeps saying, like, oh, he's ready. You know, he's doing fine. He's progressing. But that's a little bit of coach speak. You know, what are they going to do? Walk out at the podium and say, oh, this is ugly. This is not good. Most coaches are not going to do that. They're not going to just destroy their quarterback right there on the podium. So I'm having a hard time just saying, oh, yeah, they went and got Carson Beck. Perfect. Like, I get it. He was the runner. He was the favorite for the Heisman last year. Doesn't mean anything this year. If, you know, they don't care what you did 5 minutes. They only care about what you did 5 minutes ago. And 5 minutes ago, Carson Beck had a really struggling year at Georgia. And then if you read the news enough, there was some maybe off the field stuff as well that you're just getting involved in drama, and that makes you wonder a little bit too. So as far as I'm concerned with Carson, I just have a hard time trusting Carson Beck. And in this day and age, if your quarterback isn't playing at the level he needs to, you're just going to be limited in, you know, the how far up that mountaintop you can get. The best example of that is the Ohio State Buckeyes 2 years ago with Kyle McCord. You know, they had Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jackson Smith and Jigba, although he was hurt, and they had Chris Olave at that time still, I believe, yes. And they had Travion Henderson, although I believe that was also one of his injured seasons. But still, Kyle McCord just didn't have the talent to get them to a certain level. And he ended up throwing 2 picks in the Michigan game, and you could see he was limited in the Notre Dame game. He just didn't quite have that arm talent, that ability to drive Ohio State. I always talk about, does the quarterback drive the bus or does he sit on the bus? In that scenario, Kyle McCord at Ohio State, he sat on the bus. And, you know, I don't care who you say drove it. Marvin Harrison drove it. The receivers drove it. The defense, whatever. The quarterback in that instance rode the bus. He didn't drive the bus. In this case, I think Carson Beck is going to be a guy who rides the bus but doesn't drive it. He's going to need the pieces around him to make him better rather than the other way around. So that's my only question with Miami. Now, if Carson Beck comes out and plays the way he did 2 years ago at Georgia, okay, now guess what? Miami's a national title contender, just like they were last year. They're going to fight for a playoff spot. They're going to fight to win the ACC. And oh boy, will it be a fun year for Miami. But I myself just don't have that confidence right now in Carson Beck. Could all change within, you know, a week. You know, if he goes out week 1 and just absolutely dominates, that could change. You know, I'll come right back on here and say, oh, well, never mind then. Looks like he's just fine. But again, until I see it, I'm going to bet on the fact that he's just not the same he was 2 years ago. All right, Louisville. All right. Jeff Brom's got his next quarterback in Miller Moss, went and got him from USC. I think Miller Moss has a lot of potential. He played great in that bowl game a couple years back now for USC. I think he got stuck in the same system that Caleb Williams got stuck in, where it was, oh, we just need you to be the hero. We just need you to take the ball, throw the ball 40 times a game because our defense is getting better, but it's not there yet. And so we are going to need you to just throw the ball all over the place. We're going to be playing from behind at times, and we don't exactly have the run game that you need. So just please save us. And Miller Moss is not Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams couldn't even do that past the first year. And USC had a good team the first year Caleb Williams was there. It was after that, the next year, that he didn't have the pieces surrounding him, and Caleb had to go out there and hero it. And I think that's what Miller Moss got stuck with this year. Got stuck with last year, just having to hero it all the time. And he did not have that ability. He is at Louisville. Jeff Brom, known as a quarterback guru, and Miller Moss is possibly his next Frankenstein's monster, where he just turned, and we'll see what he turns him into. He could turn him into, ACC Offensive Player of the Year contender. I could see that happening. They're going to have one of the better backfields in the ACC, maybe not even just the ACC, in all of college football. My worry is the defense. Every year that Jeff Brom has been there, the defense has gotten worse. Now, he did kind of pull a Ryan Day this past offseason and say, I spent a lot more time with the defense this year. I wasn't just sitting over there with the quarterbacks and the offense. I got deep into it I got much deeper into it with the defense this year to try to make us better in that area. Maybe that will have the same effect. Maybe it won't. We'll have to wait and see. But they have a lot of turnover on the defense, a lot of transfer guys coming in, and it's hard to make that gel in just, 5-6 months. It's hard when you've got a lot of guys who have never played together. They may only have like 2 returning starters. And so a lot of guys that have never played together. They haven't even met each other up until 5 or 6 months ago. And now they have to go out and gel and play as a team kind of right away if you want to have a real shot at winning this conference. There's not much time for, oh, hey, let's just all get to know each other and feel it out. There's not a whole lot of time for that. You got to be productive basically right away. So that is my concern with Louisville. It is the quarterback position is a little bit of a concern. There's no guarantee that that's going to work with Jeff Brom and Miller Moss. There's no guarantee. Although I have much more confidence in Jeff Brom and Miller Moss and that offense working out, especially with the running back tandem they have, which will take pressure off Miller Moss, than I do that defense. My concern level for the offense, the quarterback, the running back position is here. My concern for the defense is, up here with all that turnover they've had. So that's where I sit with Louisville. I think they could contend to win the conference. They could. And it's going to come down to Miller Moss doing what he did in that bowl game semi-consistently. You're not going to give that kind of performance every week, but that has to be more the norm than what we saw last year. And I think the key to that is taking pressure off of them, which I think can happen with that running back duo we have. But it will also come down to that defense being able to hold the line and not give up a bunch of points every game, to where now it's the same thing he had at USC, where he has to come out, throw the ball, 30, 40 times, save us, win the game for him. All right. Florida State. I have no idea what Florida State could be this year. I don't think anybody does. Nobody has any idea what Florida State will be, this year, after last year. Because when you were hearing the Florida State coaches talk before the beginning of last year, they were talking about, we think we have one of the best defensive lines, if not the best defensive line in college football. You heard that. They were saying those things. And they didn't have anything close. So the coaches thought they were going to have still one of the better teams in college football last year. I didn't have much confidence in them last year going into it because I knew who their quarterback was. And I'm going to butcher his last name. I always do it. But who their quarterback was, DJ Ungalangalele. I always do that every single time. I can't. It just continues to roll. I can't stop it. But, he after a couple of games of filling in for Trevor Lawrence at Clemson, he hadn't had a good stretch of games since then. So I didn't have any confidence in him. So I always thought last year they were going to have a pretty low ceiling. I thought it was a high floor, low ceiling kind of team last year going into it. And, that's not what the coaches felt. As I said, the coaches felt they were still going to be one of the better teams. Turns out nobody was right. I said low ceiling, high floor. It was very low ceiling, lower floor. Just absolutely just shocked the world, and not in a good way. It was how bad they were. Just nothing went right from the moment the season started. And that is what I think that is the absolute example of transfer portal gone wrong, because that was Mike Norvell's thing. He got in there. It was like Dion at Colorado, just on a lesser degree. Get in, change the entire team through the transfer portal, crap ton of turnover every year he's been there now, and transfer portal. And I think that was a great example of it didn't work. It did not go the way you wanted it to. No one gelled. Which could happen like to Louisville's defense this year. Transfer portal may not work out for you. But it really went bad last year for Florida State, and I have no idea what they are going to be this year. When they did a lot in the transfer portal again this year, like they have every year he's been there, and now you're banking on it working again. And if it doesn't work again, if it's as bad as it was last year, Mike Norvell will probably be fired. I don't know what his buyout is, but as long as it's not too treacherous, I would predict Mike Norvell to no longer be there at the end of this year if it goes the way it did last year. With that said, even if it went 500, I think he'd end up being on the hot seat next year. They'd be like, okay, it's improved. You're getting it back to that space, getting it back to that point where you were a couple of years ago. But now next year you'll have to blow the doors off the place and get back to competing for the playoff like you were. And that could happen. They could go 0-11 again. They could go 6-6. I have absolutely no idea what Florida State is going to do this year and what they could be. None whatsoever. All right, Georgia Tech. I love Georgia Tech. Brent Key has brought them back to national relevancy. And it's just the kind of coach he is. He's like Dan Campbell at Detroit. It's hard-nosed. It's tough. It's in your face. We're not going to back down from anybody. We're not scared of anybody. I even though he's maybe not, as much as like an entertainer that Dan Campbell is, even though I don't think Dan Campbell's really trying to be an entertainer. It's just who he is. Even though I think Brent Key is a little bit more low key than like someone like Dan Campbell. Like I said, those same virtues are right there. Hard-nosed, tough, in your face. We ain't scared of nobody. You want to come punch us? Good. Come punch us. We're going to punch you right back. I love Haynes King, despite the fact that he's always going to be a huge injury risk, because he plays the same way. He plays tough. He plays hard-nosed. Maybe not the most talented arm in the world, but he can run. I see him run. I think of like JT Barrett at Ohio State, something like that. Just hard-nosed runner. It doesn't blow the doors off with his speed, but it just seems to be so smooth, and he always seems to find the right gap, and he always seems to find the right timing, and he takes off, and he doesn't go down. He fights for every yard. But as far as, and again, Brent Key has brought them back to national relevancy. They beat number 10 Florida State last year in the season opener, back when we thought that was still an upset. Turns out they were the team that was supposed to win that game. We just didn't know it at the time. They went and beat number 4 Miami, and that was the beginning of Miami's started their downfall, really. So they were kind of responsible for that. And then they took number 6 Georgia to 8 overtimes. That's still one of the most exciting games ever to watch. And, I'm not going to sit here and lie. I was rooting for Georgia Tech the whole time. And I guess what I probably will be again this year. Their problem is on the defensive side of the ball. They gave up 31 points in 5 of their 6 losses. Now, I love Haynes King, but they don't have the offense to do that. He is not enough of maybe this year he could be. Maybe he could take that next step. But from what you saw last year, he is not enough of that prolific type of thrower to have your defense constantly give up 31 points and, just, okay, you're going to put up 31, we'll put up 40. They can't operate that way. Again, Haynes King is a better runner than he is a thrower. Well, runner means that clock's going to keep going. You're not going to get the big play that you could if you had, that prolific type of arm. So their defense has to step up. Their defense has to do a better job of managing the game and just, getting stops, just flat out. Just got to be better at getting stops on the defense. If they do that, Georgia Tech could have a special year, man. They could have a really special year. They could really take that next step and compete to win the ACC. And you'll see why I think that here coming up pretty soon. All right. Virginia Tech. Kenyon Drones returns at quarterback, but like a lot of these other teams, like I just talked about with Georgia Tech, lot of turnover on the defense. Really went hard in the transfer portal, and again, it's just like Louisville. I'm always concerned when you have that much turnover on either side of the ball. How fast can you make that gel? Not only from a player-to-player standpoint where everyone feels comfortable with each other and they understand their little idiosyncrasies and this guy know what this guy wants to do and so on and so forth. How fast can you pick up the playbook? Everyone I think kind of takes that for granted. But, if you watched QB on Netflix, that quarterback documentary, I know this is quarterback and defense are different, but if you watch that docuseries, Kirk Cousins talked about how just a big of adjustment it was to go from Minnesota to Atlanta because of how many different motions that they had. Atlanta's playbook was so motion heavy that it took him a long time during the preseason to understand, like, this guy's going to move here. Like, the timing of it all is hard. And so you can't take the fact that they have to learn a new playbook for granted at all. I really understood that after watching that this second season of that docuseries. So there's no guarantee these guys are going to just pick up that playbook right away. And then on top of that, everyone has to be comfortable with each other and get along with each other and gel. So I'm always going to be a little, worried when one side of the ball has had so much turnover and we're just asking them to walk in right away and, you're just pick it up where you left off. We need you to actually be better than the last group. And so I'm always going to be worried about that. And that's where their concerns lie this year on that side of the ball. If the defense works out, they could compete to win the ACC with the guy with Drones at QB. So they need to. He's a good quarterback. They need to take advantage of having him while they do and get that defense in order so they can really go compete to possibly win something. All right, SMU. SMU has had 2 straight 11-plus win seasons. Kevin Jennings returns at quarterback. Their problem this year could end up being their schedule. Last year, their schedule was not as tough as it's going to be this year. And they took it, and, kudos to them. You can only play who's on your schedule. You can only play who they give you. And they took advantage of their schedule last year, and they got themselves into the playoff. But that's not going to happen this year. They may win, but my point is they're not going to be able to take advantage of an easy schedule. If they are going to get back into the playoff, they are going to have to go through some really tough teams. They're going to have both Miami and Louisville come to their place, and they got to go to Clemson. That is, I don't care what time of day you're playing, that's raucous right there. So that's where my worries lie, because I will, without even looking, I will bet $5 on paper to paper. Clemson, Miami, and Louisville are all going to hold the talent edge in those games. And we saw that when SMU got into the playoff last year. It just didn't go well. Once you got into that playoff, it just did not go well. They just did not have the talent on their side of the field to win that game. And that's what I'm worried about, this year. When Miami, when Louisville, and when Clemson come to play, I believe they'll be underdogs in probably every single one of those games, and those 3 teams will have the talent edge on their side. So how do you figure it out to win those games? It's one thing to win one. It's one thing to win one of those games and to just, find a way. 3 of them. So how are you going to do that? Usually when upsets like that happen, a few things have to happen. You need to be able to run the ball well so you can hold on to it, so you can keep their offense off the field. You need their offense to, quite frankly, make mistakes, not ones that you even necessarily force, ones that they make on their own, throwing interceptions, fumbling the ball. missing an assignment, something dropping a pass, something like that. There are a few, almost kind of luck type things that just need to fall your way. The 50-50 ball, the ball just bounces your way on some occasions. And again, it's one thing for it to happen once, like when they go play Clemson or something, but then to have it happen when they play Clemson and Miami and Louisville, because again, I don't think they're going to have the talent edge in any of those games. So that it's going to be a tall task for them this year, which is why I'm honestly kind of expecting them to take a step back, because I'm not going to take them to win any of those games. All right, now, conference title game. I am going to go Clemson, Georgia Tech in the ACC championship game. That's why I was, so hyped up on Georgia Tech earlier. I really think they could do something really special this year if they can just get that defense in order. If that defense can get in order, they could absolutely I don't want to say take the college football world by shock, because it wouldn't be a shock, because again, they've been back in the national spotlight. They've come up with great wins. So to see them come up with other wins wouldn't be shocking, but I think they could become a talking point consistently throughout the whole year, where it's not just 1 week of, hey, Georgia Tech went and upset, Miami. Was that one of I flipped the page. Yeah, they went and upset Miami, but then, the next week they lose to, I don't even know, but they lose to one of the mid-level teams in the ACC, and then you forget about them because now they're not really a contender, because you just lost to a team you should not lose to if you're going to go beat number 4 Miami. So it's that consistency. And if they get that, if Haynes King comes back from injury, plays the way he can, defense gets better, they could become a talking point throughout the whole year, where it's, oh, hey, look at Georgia Tech. Oh, hey, Georgia Tech's coming. And all it takes is one game. Look, I'm going to take Clemson to beat Georgia Tech in the ACC championship game. I'm going to take Clemson to win the ACC championship and get in the playoff and go on quite frankly, a deep playoff run, because their whole team is back. They just have so much talent returning. Now, is that a guarantee? No, it's not a guarantee that you get 10%, 20%, 5% better just from another year of experience. It's not guaranteed. But we've seen these past couple of years, when teams have guys come back that have been there, good things happen. That's happened with the last 2 national title winners. So that is why I'm so high on Clemson this year. But I think Georgia Tech could really do something special. The other thing to keep in mind here with this matchup that I've got, Clemson, Georgia Tech, Cade Klubnik, Haynes King at quarterbacks. Those two had the highest QBR last year in the ACC of returning quarterbacks. Cam Ward had the highest, but he's gone. And then Kyle McCord was 4th, but he's gone to the NFL. So of the returning quarterbacks, Cade Klubnik and Haynes King had the 2 highest QBRs in the ACC last year. Cade Klubnik was 2nd, Haynes King was 3rd. So in my mind, these are going to be the 2 best quarterbacks in the ACC this year, and I'll take Miller Moss to be 3rd, and I'm going to take Louisville to push. I'm going to take Louisville to push. I'm going to take Miller Moss, take that next step, and for Louisville to push these 2 teams throughout the whole year and to threaten to get into that ACC title game. But I'm going to have them come up just a little bit short. And hey, look, I've got Clemson winning this whole thing, but again, it only takes one game. Could you imagine, Clemson, Georgia Tech in an ACC championship game, and Georgia Tech finds a way to upset? That would be awesome for college football, and to have Georgia Tech be in the playoff. And not only as a team that can't compete to win. If you go into that title game and you beat Clemson, first of all, if you get to the title game, that means you've done things throughout the year to get to that game. And you go in there and beat Clemson with all that returning production. That means you're a team. You're not just there because, the college football playoff said, well, we have to have a spot for this certain team, kind of like, quite frankly, SMU was. So that would be huge for Georgia Tech. But I will take Clemson to win the ACC title, and I'll take Cade Klubnik. I'm not going to say he's going to win the Heisman, but he's definitely a Heisman contender throughout the whole year. All right. As far as the NFL goes, there's not really much NFL news at this point in the year. Training camps are starting to wrap up. they're coming to an end as we get the season underway. All you've got at this point really are, cuts around the NFL. Shiloh Sanders did get cut by the Bucks, which, you just can't be stupid. There was no guarantee he was going to make that roster to begin with. So he was fighting for a spot from day one. And then you go out there and punch a guy during a preseason game. You're just making it easy for him. You're making it easy for him to go cut, bye. Because you're already hanging right there on the edge of making the team, and being a free agent. And then when you get into a physical altercation like that, you're just making their job easy. So you can't let that happen. All right. As far as the NFL AFC divisions, I'm going to do the AFC divisions first today. AFC East. I'm going to go, shocker, Buffalo wins that one. Josh Allen can just hero it, all the way through the year if he has to. I'll go Miami 2. I'll go Miami to finish second in the division. I just don't trust Tua. Tyreek was down last year. And, we don't know how that relationship is right now because of what Tyreek said at the end of last year. And, Tua said that not everything's healed at this point. They're still building trust. That was of a few weeks ago anyway. Maybe things continue to get better. So honestly, I'm kind of hesitant to even put them second, but that's more just because of the talent that the other two teams have in that division, where I'm kind of like, well, I don't think they can be as bad as the other two. So I'll take Miami, finish second there. New England will finish third. I really went back and forth on New England finishing third in the division and the Jets finishing third, just because I want to believe in Justin Fields. I think he has so much potential, and Garrett Wilson. I just want to believe in those two guys so much, and Bryce Hall. But at this point, I think with the Jets, I just got to see it to believe it. It's like Santa Claus. I got to see it if I want to believe it. But no, so I will take New England and Mike Vrabel to get third in that division, but I still don't expect much out of them. They're going through a rebuild right now. He's in there trying to set the culture at this current moment, and I think it's just going to take a little while before they get everything to the point they want there. All right. AFC, and like I said, the Jets, I'll take them to fourth. Again, I really want to believe in Garrett Wilson and Justin Fields, but I just don't know. I got to see it to believe it. All right, the AFC South. The AFC South could be one of the worser divisions in the NFL this year. Jacksonville, I don't see much talent there. I don't see much talent on Tennessee. The former New York quarterback is going to be the starting quarterback for Indy this year. I'm all of a sudden I'm losing. I should have written it down. I figured I'd just remember it, but all of a sudden now I'm losing his name. But everybody knows who I'm talking about. The starting quarterback for the Giants, Daniel Jones. There we go. Good job by me. And then Houston. Houston, if things go the way it should, Houston should just run away with this division. If CJ Stroud, he had his sophomore slump last year. If he bounces back, they should just absolutely run away with the AFC South this year. It shouldn't even be close. But that said, CJ Stroud needs to respond, and he needs to get back to what we saw when he first got to the NFL. I'll go Indy finishes second. Tennessee finishes third. Jacksonville finishes fourth. You could swap those out, though. Again, I really don't know what I'm going to get from those three teams, because I just don't see enough quarterback play on any of those three teams to really do anything. All right. AFC West. This is hard. I mean, this was actually hard for me. Just because they have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Because they have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, I'll take Kansas City to win the AFC West. Because they've done it so many times. They're proven track record of doing stuff like that. I'll take them to win it. I really wanted to almost say Denver, though. Denver finishes second, gets into the playoffs. I really wanted to almost flip that because I really like Bo Nix. I really like Sean Payton. He's got Curtis Sutton to throw the ball to. I really like that team. But again, just because of Kansas City's track record, I will trust Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid to get the job done until they don't. Chargers finishes Chargers finished third. Just waiting for Herbert to be unlocked. There's so much potential there. We've seen it, but he just quite still hasn't taken that next step to being, quite frankly, an MVP candidate, like a lot of people think he could be, me included. And I don't know if that's going to happen with Jim Harbaugh or not, because they don't exactly, they're a tough style team, like they were at Michigan, not the type to throw the ball all over the place, So I just wonder how much more development he can really get. And then the Raiders, I'll have them finish last because what do they have? I just don't see it there with the Raiders talent wise. They're gonna have another rough year most likely. All right, guys, that's it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time when we break down the Big 12 and go through the NFC divisions. All right, thanks, guys.